Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Endless Party. We are so glad you're here. If we haven't expressed it enough, we truly are. And the reason we want to express it a little more on this particular episode is because we are speaking about kindness.
I'm going to be real. All day long, I have known that we are going to be filming this episode about kindness. And I just want to put a full disclaimer. I am not perfect at this.
No.
And in filming this podcast, it's helped me to be more mindful of just the importance of being kind. But even today, there are certain situations where I was like, what am I doing? I just need to be nice.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, so yeah.
I agree. And so, disclaimer to all of our podcast episodes, we are human. I wish we were a little better than we are. But that's why we're even doing this podcast, is to hope that we can help other people as we strive to emulate everything that we are teaching you.
Yes.
Kindness is no different. There's actually a beautiful story that is one of my favorite stories, even though it's so tragic. And it's the story of this little boy. It's a true story. Years and years ago, during a 3-day holiday weekend, the hospital was filled to the brim with patients that unfortunately experienced holiday tragedy. And on this particular occasion, a little boy was wheeled in on a gurney, and he was hanging on for dear life. He was in a ward with hundreds of men screaming in agony, screaming in pain, and the doctors came in and said, "Look, I know each and every one of you are in extreme pain, but we just got this little boy in. He just lost his mother, his father, and his sister, and he's the only remaining one of his family, and the only chance for him to live is if he is kept in complete darkness and complete silence through the night."
Wow.
Every single person in that ward bit their tongue, screamed into their pillow, because they believed that they were giving that boy his fighting chance for life. Every single person in that ward. And that's what kindness is. And what's so miraculous about this story is that oftentimes kindness comes at the most tragic and horrendous times in our life. I even look back to when Meg was going through preeclampsia, when she was going through just even the twin pregnancy, and had an emergency C-section, and how kind, caring, and considerate so many people were to us. Specifically the nurses.
Our nurses were angels.
Our nurses were incredible, not only to Meg and myself, but also to our brand new 3-pound babies.
Like, they supported our family so much.
Well, and they went beyond that, right? They went beyond their job.
Yes.
Just real quick, will you tell the story about the last night our baby was there?
Yes. Okay. So, we actually haven't told a lot of people this, but our twins didn't come home together.
No.
So they were on track to be coming home the very same day, and which is like a miracle, because a lot of times twins won't come home on the same day, just because
one does a little better, one does a little worse.
Whatever.
They switch off.
So ours were on track to be coming home the same day, and that's what we were anticipating. But last minute, one of our twins had to end up staying an extra night just to be monitored, just to make sure that things were okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened was, we took our first baby home that day, and then our other twin was left behind at the hospital, which was horribly sad. It was so hard for us because we just wanted both of our babies to be home. Anyways, and the other baby who was left at the hospital, I know that she knew that her sister was gone and that we weren't there. Anyway, so I was already sleep deprived because we had been up the night before with our first baby who came home, and our second baby wasn't doing super great at the NICU. She just kind of was refusing to eat, and she was having a really hard time. And I so desperately wanted my baby home with to be a part of our whole family. So I went up to the NICU, and I actually didn't cry very often there. We were able to stay strong and just be okay. But at that moment, I broke down in my little baby's room with her. And I just started crying to the nurse, and I was like, I want my baby home so bad, and she's not eating, and this is really stressful for me, because I was planning on staying there basically all night to make sure
she came home.
My baby came home. And this nurse, she was more of like a therapist in that moment, and she was just kind of this nice grandmotherly lady, and she helped me feed my baby and change my baby, and she put music on for my baby, and she did all of these things to make sure that I could see that the baby was getting the best care that she needed. And then she also gave me a hug and told me that I could go home and I should sleep, because she was going to be taking really good care of my baby, and my baby would be coming home the next day. And our baby did get to come home the next day. And I actually know it was because of the care of the nurse that she did get to come home, because I think had it been
anybody else,
I don't think our baby would have come home. But this nurse went above and beyond to make sure that our baby was just so carefully taken care of.
Yeah.
And it was so kind of her.
Yeah, and that's really what we're trying to emulate within this podcast, is just that nurse didn't have to do that.
No.
She didn't have to comfort you. She didn't have to give you a hug. She didn't have to go above and beyond to give our daughter really good care. But instead, she did go above and beyond. And I think that's the power of just the human soul, of humanity, and of genuine kindness. It was no different than all of those patients that were in agony when this little boy was wheeled in, and all of them just bit their tongue to make sure that they did their part in giving this boy a chance.
I think the reason why kindness is so touching is because when we are so altruistic and kind and just doing things for the right reason, it's because we are acting like our Savior. And when we are acting like Him, that Christ-like power, enters us, and we can just kind of feel that portion of God's power within us, because we're acting, like His Son. And I think that Jesus Christ is our best example of kindness. In Matthew, it says that He healed the sick. And in Mark, it says He spent much of His time ministering to the one, or sometimes the many. He spoke compassionately to the Samaritan woman who was looked down upon by many. He instructed His disciples to allow the little children to come unto Him. He was kind to all who sinned, condemning only the sin and not the sinner. And so when we get glimmers of that within just humanity, it's just so powerful, because we're acting like He would.
I agree. I can look back to the times that people were so kind to me. I mean, I've shared this story a million times, but my third grade teacher influenced me to be a better student, be a better writer, be good at English, even though so many people told me I was lousy at it. I also think about my 7th grade PE teacher who took me aside and said, "You're better than this." And I just think about all of these influences and examples in my life. They never had to do that. They didn't have to be kind. They could have just let life go and let it go on. But instead, they took the time to, just as the Savior did, minister to the one that was in need and help those who were downtrodden. I want to take a quick side note here as well. So I mentioned my 7th grade PE teacher, and if you've listened to this podcast before, he took me aside when I was just hanging out with the wrong crowd, just a bunch of lowlifes. And he said, "You're better than this. You need to raise your standard of excellence, because you are an excellent person and you can go really far in this life." Interestingly enough, he criticized me and he pushed me, and that was kindness.
Sure.
And so that's what I want to emphasize. Kindness does not always mean coddling. It does not always mean this great big smile on your face. It doesn't always mean that. It can mean that you speak the frank truth to a loved one. With love, I might add.
Right.
But it can be very, very direct. It can be very passionate. It can be, what's the word I'm looking for? Just almost fierce.
Okay, cool.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different. Like, Meg even used so many examples in there. But Christ, even with the woman that was caught in adultery, right? He was so kind, but he didn't say, hey, what you're doing is okay.
Right.
Your actions are okay. You know what? Just keep being who you are. Instead, he showed her love. He showed her compassion. And he said, go and sin no more. Be better. Do better. And I think that's powerful. And I think that's incredible about kindness, is just the fact that it can be a genuine hug. It can be a heartfelt smile. It can be putting on music for your baby. It can be a million different things. And I think you'll know what it is when it comes your way.
I think so too. I think you can use your best judgment to know what kindness looks like in every situation, for sure.
Yeah. There's actually another story. I can't remember the woman's name. I think it's Vera Allen. And this woman was an elderly woman during the Great Depression. So a lot of passerbys, travelers would come by, a lot of homeless people, and they would ask if they had any work for them so they could just get a meal from her. And she always, without fail, found something for them to do. The most odd jobs around her little homestead. And it was interesting, she finally got what seemed like her millionth traveler that stopped by, and she finally asked the man, and she goes, why do all of you keep stopping by? Like, I'm not offended, and I'm glad to lend a helping hand, but why do you all keep stopping by my home? And this man said to her, are you serious? Do you even have to ask that question? And she goes, yes, like, I'm serious. He thought that she was kidding. And so finally, he recognized that this woman was being genuine, that she had no idea why people kept stopping by her house. So he walked her out to the road, and he pointed to the tree. And there was a symbol marked on the tree for any traveler passing by that this home was a woman that you could always stop by for and expect kindness and generosity.
Wow.
And I think that's amazing. Is I look at this story of this elderly woman, Vera Allen, and I want to be that way. I want to be the one that people can always rely on and stop by, and they know that they will receive kindness and generosity.
Yes. So one of the kind things you've done for me is actually buy me, I have this little book of quotes.
Oh.
And one of the quotes, it doesn't have an author, but it's the quotes, it's the little booklet's definition of kindness.
Oh, okay.
And it says, kindness is one of the greatest gifts you can bestow upon another. If someone is in need, lend them a helping hand. Do not wait for a thank you. True kindness lives within the act of giving without expectation of something in return. And that reminded me of the story you just shared. Because here she was, always giving, and these people did do small jobs for her, but she didn't expect anything in return. She was just doing it out of the goodness of her heart. It's so cool.
It's amazing. It's also cool too, is like, we talk about these grand endeavors a lot of times when it comes to kindness. We talk about the Savior healing the sick, and he's also kind to the Samaritan woman who everybody just pushed aside and was really an outcast. We also talk about Vera Allen, who helped travelers that were passing by during the Great Depression. But that doesn't mean that you can't go out of your way to be kind. And what does this look like to you? Well, as me and Meg just expressed a little bit ago, it can be different. Like, you will know when you should be kind and how you should be kind, depending on the situation. But a lot of times we do think it's these grand gestures, and it doesn't have to be that. It can be a hug. It can be a smile. It can be helping in your community. I can genuinely say that this world is in more need of just genuine compassion and genuine praise than it is of food and clothing. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times and places when you should go out of your way to donate clothes and food A prime example is in the hurricanes going on in the East Coast right now. There is horrific damage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people are without homes, they are without shelter, they were without power, they are without food. And so those are times and places where you can lend a genuine helping hand and give to those in need. However, a lot of us can't do that as much as we would like to, but you can lend a genuine smile. You can lend a compassionate heart. You can be a little kinder to your neighbor and help out in the community as much as possible. There are ways that you can be kind.
Right. So I think for me, as I was, thinking about what I wanted to share on this podcast, I was thinking, well, how can I be better at being kind? And I got this information from a lot of different sources, and one of the ways that we can be kind is we can learn how to foster kind thoughts. And so I wanted to read this really quick, and it says, thinking kind thoughts is a Christ-like attribute. Kindness originates in hearts and minds, and a lack of kindness can begin with critical thoughts of others, and it can develop into a habit of finding fault. However, if we accept responsibility for our own reactive thinking, we can become more charitable. And I had one other thing I wanted to share on this, just because I think something that I know all of us struggle with is it's very easy to criticize and judge others.
Very easy.
And I think that if we want to be kinder people, the first way we can begin is with our thoughts. So this is another little passage. It's by Joseph D. Worthland. He's one of the leaders of our church, and I thought it was really just powerful. So he goes, the things you say, the tone of your voice, the anger or calm of your words, these things are noticed by your children and by others. They see and learn both the kind and the unkind things we do and say. Nothing exposes our true selves more than how we treat one another in the home. I thought that was so cool, because you really will see people at their true selves in the way that they interact in their home and with their family members. And then he goes on to say, I often wonder why some feel they must be critical of others. It gets in their blood, I suppose, and it becomes so natural they often don't even think about it. They seem to criticize everyone. The way that so-and-so plants her garden, the way so-and-so teaches a lesson, the way this one person decides to drive. And even when we think we are doing no harm by our critical remarks, consequences will often follow. And so I thought that was so cool, because it was just a reminder for me to clean up my thoughts. I was on a run this morning with the babies, and a lot of times I spend that time meditating, praying. And it was actually today that I found myself running, and I was going into this horrible spiral, and I was really criticizing somebody in my mind. And in that moment, I was like, I don't really want to be doing this. And so I immediately started to try to think about things I was grateful for, things I was thankful for. And that was a good way for me to just kind of flip my mentality, because I fall into this trap all the time too, where it's so easy and so habitual to criticize others to maybe make ourselves feel better. But it's like, no, that's not kind. And a sure way to become more kind is to stop that habit.
Yeah. Actually, I like what you just said, because I was thinking about what happened even this morning. I was working on this business write-up that I had to submit to a few investors. And I asked Meg, my kind wife here, to review it for me. And so she was going through it, and she was helping me make corrections and everything. And I wasn't mad at her or upset with her, but I was so upset. I don't even know why. There was definitely a fly in the room, and it was driving me crazy. But then I just seemed like I was annoyed. And what's insane is the quote that you just said really hits right on the head, because I think so often we are most unkind with those that we love the most, because we are also most comfortable with them. And so we give ourselves this out, almost, not even an out, what's the word, this excuse to be unkind to those that we love the most. And it's crazy, because if I even look back to this past year with our twins, I was probably most unkind to you more than anybody. And I'm not saying I'm a bad husband or I'm not
he's
kind.
really good, but we are human.
But it's interesting, right? And so it does make you wonder, okay, what do I need to fix?
Yes.
And it originates with your thoughts. Actually, James Allen, from the famous book As a Man Thinketh, he says, a noble and godlike character is not a thing of favor or chance, but is the natural result of continued effort in right thinking, the effect of long cherished association with godlike thoughts. So we've talked about this before, but it all starts with your thoughts. It all begins with your thinking. What you think is what you become. So if you think negative and bad thoughts, you're going to be negative and bad.
And critical and mean.
Right. If you think kind thoughts and gracious thoughts, you'll be kind and gracious. I know it sounds incredibly simplistic, and it is simple, but it's not easy.
It is hard.
So often we believe that simple means easy, and it's not.
Not the case.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry.
No. That's all I was saying.
Oh, okay. So, I feel bad. Okay.
No, you're good.
I wanted to jump in because I found these 5 questions by Linda K. Burton.
Cool.
And they're stellar at helping, I think, all of us just to remember to treat other people kindly and to foster kindness. So, number 1, when was the last time I sincerely praised my companion, either alone or in the presence of our children? Number 2, when was the last time I thanked, expressed love for, or earnestly pleaded in faith for him or her in prayer? 3, when was the last time I stopped myself from saying something I knew could be hurtful? 4, when was the last time I apologized and humbly asked for forgiveness without adding the words, but if only you had, or but if only you hadn't? And number 5, when was the last time I chose to be happy rather than demanding to be right? And I'm actually going to put these in my daily journal because I think they're going to help me too.
That's actually, those are really good questions.
They're such good questions to ask yourself, and they're things that I want to be doing on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I want to put them in my, my little journal because I want to be doing those things.
Constantly reminding yourself.
Yes.
So ask yourself those 5 questions. I mean, even with me, I'm like, oh man, maybe I should, I need a game.
I could be nicer.
I could be a little kinder, that's for sure. There's no doubt. There's actually another story by a woman named Mary Hill Peterson. And I think this goes hand in hand with what we were talking about, just genuine praise and being kind in that way. So she worked at a school for at-risk children. And she would speak so highly of every single one of her students. And it was genuine praise. It wasn't false flattery. And so what she would say is that she would give these kids encouragement throughout the day and point out their talents and their strengths and really just emphasize what incredible people these students are and can be. One young man came up to her at the end of a class after the class had left, and he goes, I don't believe any of this nonsense that you say, and just started to criticize and condemn her. And finally she just took a step back and she goes, I learned a long time ago not to worry about how other people are behaving or what other people say. But what I've chosen to do is point out what is truly valuable in a person instead of pointing out what is truly faulty. The year goes on and she continues to live in that same genuine praise and kind manner that she always has been. At the end of the year, the student again comes up to her at the end of the class after the class has left, and he goes, Miss Peterson, I've decided I want to be like you. And I just wanted to say thank you for an incredible year. That's the type of impact that someone can have when it comes to just genuine kindness. That's how profound. I mean, you can ultimately change somebody's life in an instant just by being kind.
Right. If you're a little bit, sometimes I'm a little bit of a bot. And when I hear these things, I'm like, okay, well, being kind, that's all well and good. But, then you ask yourself, well, what if people are rude? Well, you gotta be kind. Or what if someone's super obnoxious? Love them, be kind. But what if they do something that really offends me? Surely then, there's I don't have to be kind. But no, be kind, love them. And, you might be asking yourself why. And again, Joseph Wirthlin pointed this out. He goes, in the scriptures, Jude taught, and of some have compassion making a difference. So who can tell what far-reaching impact we can have if we are only kind? Your kindness does matter, and it does impact people, and it does make this world a better place.
Absolutely.
So even to all the people who might ruffle your feathers in a wrong way, they still deserve kindness, even if they've done nothing
to deserve it.
Yeah. And that's really hard, and that's something I'm still working on.
We all have to work on that. So I want to end with two things. So there's a poem by Robert Burns, and then Meg will end with a beautiful story of farm shoes and a silver dollar.
Farm shoes and a silver dollar. Stay tuned.
So Robert Burns wrote, if you hear a kind word spoken of some worthy soul you know, it may fill his heart with sunshine if you'd only tell him so. If a deed, however humble, helps you on your way to go, seek the one whose hand has helped you. Seek him out and tell him so. If your heart is touched and tender toward a sinner lost and low, it might help him to do better if you only tell him so. A lot of times, kindness is just communicating. It's just genuinely telling somebody, hey, you did a great job today. Or, hey, thank you so much for everything that you've done for me. So just communicate a little more. That's what I had to say.
That's a good thought. Okay, so the final story of the podcast. Here we go. There was an older brother and a younger brother, and they were walking together down this old beaten farm road. And as they were walking, they noticed that by the side of this road, there was a battered coat and a pair of really, really old boots. And they had holes in them, and they were super worn. And out in the distance, they saw the owner tending to his field. And so the younger brother goes over to the shoes and looks up at his older brother, and he's like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we hide the shoes and then we hide ourselves and we watch this man come back from his work? And we, watch him be confused that he doesn't have any shoes. Won't that be so funny to take his shoes? And the older brother sat there for a minute, and he responded to the younger brother, and he goes, well, what if we did something else? And he takes out a silver dollar. And instead of hiding the shoes, he takes the silver dollar and he puts it in the man's boot. And the younger brother, watching the older brother's example, takes out one of his own silver dollars and puts it in the other boot. And so with anticipation, they put the boots back and they hide. And as the day ends, they watch this farmer come back from his work, and he's taking off his work boots and putting his normal shoes back on. They watch him slip his foot in, and he feels something hard. And so confused, he takes his boot off and he finds a silver dollar. And he holds it in his hand, and you can tell there's just this moment of just surprise, but just genuine, thanksgiving. And he does the same with his other boot, and he finds another silver dollar. And holding the silver dollars in his hands, he immediately kneels down and starts to audibly pray. And in his prayer, he, thanks God for giving him this bounty, and also to bless those who had given it to him. And in his prayer, he explains that he had a wife who was very sick, and it left her helpless to take care of his kids. And he explained that his children didn't have any bread. And so by receiving this money, he was going to be able to take care of his family. And the story is so beautiful because these boys decided that they were going to be kind instead of playing a practical joke. And they didn't know what their kindness was going to lead to. But in doing so, they were able to bless an entire family. And so I hope that I'm one of those people that chooses to be kind in situations, and that God can use me to help bless other people's lives. I hope I'm kind enough that I can be that person. And I'm really trying.
Yeah. I'm ashamed to admit I probably would have been the rascal little brother.
I I think I don't know what I would have been.
Probably would have been the troll.
I know.
I'm going to be honest. Thank heavens there's good older brothers out there. But I hope and we hope that these stories have at least resonated with you guys to help you just to be a little kinder and to help all of us be a little kinder. I know that they've inspired me to push on. And if anything, just as my beautiful wife here is an example, write those 5 questions down and see how you can implement them in your own life to just be a little kinder.
Because kindness matters. You never know how it's going to impact other people, but it always will for the better.
What's that quote from the Cinderella movie you love?
Have courage and be kind.
Have courage and be kind. I think those are 2 very admirable attributes.
So, until next time.
Until next time, friends, make sure you subscribe.
Do it now.
Do it now.
And
Peace.